Hey there and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug video. And recently I made a video ranking all the Akumatized villains of Season 1. Although I'm pretty sure I forgot to add one. Whoops. Anyway though, today I thought I'd go through Season 2's villains. And when I was reading through some of these, I was actually quite surprised how many iconic villains from the show there are here. Like some of the more prominent villains of the show that people often talk about make their first appearance this season. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that this is the season that really exploded the show's popularity. I mean, it was already popular, but this took it to new heights and managed to avoid a lot of the criticism around Season 3 and 4, where people started to get a bit tired with the pace of the story. It was still all smooth sailing here. So anyway, I'm going to rank them from worst to best with a couple of different tiers thrown in. And I'm not really going to take much stock into the feats from all the episodes, because sometimes the weakest villains get the jump on the heroes and almost win. This is more a ranking of which villain would be the most useful to you if you were Hawkmoth and were trying to get the Miraculouses. So with all that being said, let's jump into it, and we'll start with the trash tier. And first off the block is Gigantitan. And this is one of those villains that you can't help but think, really Gabe? Really? Because for one, the giant Hulk smash type villains are almost always bad. Usually their only defining trait is that they're big and strong and that's it. But this guy's even worse because he has the mind of a baby because, he's a baby. So I just don't see how this would ever be useful in actually succeeding in defeating heroes. They're honestly a bit of a joke. And speaking of which, we'll move on to Gorizilla, who is basically the exact same thing except with a bit more intelligence because he's a grown man instead of a baby. But once again, not all that useful. Oh, and he has an enhanced sense of smell. Ooh, that'll show him. But next up, Santa Claus. I feel like most things out of the Christmas special sucked, and this is no exception. He can fly, and that is useful, but then he has present bombs that turn into things like bats, or like swords or something. I mean, yeah, it's kind of useful, but also not in comparison to almost every other villain. So really, the trash tier is really the best this guy can hope for. And speaking of winter-themed villains, Glaciator, I don't know, it's one of the two. Another giant character. Woo, great stuff. And then he transforms people into ice cream by shooting them with ice cream. It's not a terrible power, but ultimately against the heroes it's completely useless because it turns their entire body, and everything they're wearing, into ice cream. So how are you going to get the Miraculouses back after it melts away? Also, he gets fooled by couples being in love. If he thinks they're in love, he won't attack you. No thanks, this is such a big weakness. Useless. So next up is Frightening Gale, which is a pretty basic and stock standard villain all things considered. If she hits you with a whip, you have to speak in rhymes. And if you don't, you get turned into a statue, clothes and all. So once again, I don't see how this would be useful in getting you those sweet, sweet Miraculouses. Because once again, wouldn't the Miraculous get turned into part of the statue? So what's the point of this one? So, we'll go from trash tier to low tier. They're not terrible, but they're not good either. And first up, we'll go with Prime Queen. Prime Queen can use screens as teleporters and can broadcast across all screens. Every screen. But that's really it. I mean, I guess you could use this one as a bit of a spy like they did with Optigami, but since Akumatized villains are almost always insane, I doubt you'd even go along with it. But moving on, you could get hostages with this villain, but this is also a world where Ladybug can seemingly bring people back to life by purifying the Akuma. So really, there's not really all that much need to get upset with dead hostages if you're Ladybug, because you can bring them back to life. Oh no, you've dropped them into the middle of the ocean and they'll drown. Oh no, they burned to death in the middle of the sun. Oh no, they died of exposure in outer space. Well, good thing I have this yo-yo that can bring them back to life. So it loses that impact as well. So ultimately, this villain is useless. And this brings us to Siren. Yeah, she can flood Paris, but guess what? Turns out Kwamis can power up by eating specific foods. Oopsie! And I mean, yeah, she still has the underwater battle advantage, but that's really not enough to tip the scales when your heroes have scuba gear. And it's the same principle for Froza, but he is slightly better in my opinion. But honestly, for these two, it is a bit of a toss-up. Bit of a judgment call, really. But they both kind of stink. And so now, we arrive at the mid-tier. And we can start this one off with Collector. And I like Collector. He's a good villain. He's able to trap objects and people in his notebook. And his notebook is like a magic boomerang thing. So that's useful. But once again, we come to that problem. he can't use it on the heroes to remove their miraculous. They would just get sucked in too, and he would still have to defeat them later on. But at least he can suck in their weapons, I guess. I mean, get rid of the yo-yo, and Ladybug is basically out of the game, and becomes a lot easier to overpower and defeat. I mean, you'd still have to deal with Cat Noir, but if you put him in the book and then steal the yo-yo, it's game over. But unfortunately, there is a glaring weakness. It relies on page numbers. So you can run out of space in the book. Oh well, that is a very big weakness. And really, it's just so smooth-brained. Gabe! Anyway, next up is Style Queen. And honestly, this one is good, but also not that good. Basically, it's a buffed version of Frightening Gale. But still, how are you going to get the miraculouses if you're turning people into gold dust? I mean, she still has good abilities, but none of them feel hugely useful for the task at hand. So it's not like she's bad or anything like that, but I just don't see her succeeding in getting what you want. I mean, if you're looking to massacre the city, this is the woman for you. But otherwise, she's not really the best choice. Troublemaker's up next. She's basically able to phase shift, pass through walls, the floor, theoretically other people. It's a good ability to have, good for sneak attacks and all that stealthy goodness. But it's too bad she has to click her pen to do that. Feels like a noisy click would defeat the point of stealth. Plus, you can't use both hands because one hand on the pen, so yeah, good, but not great. And I think she'd be so much better if she didn't have to make her whole body intangible at once, just parts of her, like Lemillion from My Hero Academia. That's a good example of how this power should be used. And if it was, she'd probably go higher on the list. And we'll finish off this tier with Befana. Flying motorcycle? Check. Can make people into fairy slaves to do her bidding? Check. Can be damaged by her own items? Oof. Uncheck. That is a bit of a weakness. Seriously, as soon as I saw mind control, I thought, hell yeah, how can you go wrong? But being able to be damaged by your own bloody ammo? Nah. Plus, whilst the gun could be useful in turning the heroes into mindless slaves and therefore giving you an easy path to getting the miraculouses, it could also just fail hard and turn them into coal and destroy the miraculouses along with them. So that's no good either. But here we'll move to the above average level. And we'll start off with Riposte. She has a sword that you can't take away from her, and she knows how to use it. Very strong, very fast, very dangerous. Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. She can even somehow make her sword shoot out shockwaves to slice you up from a distance. So that's obviously a very useful power when fighting heroes. But the problem with her that prevents her moving up a level is that she's a one-trick pony. A lot of villains have their funky power and a weapon on top of that. But hers is sort of combined, which reduces her adaptability. So if one hero neutralizes the sword, like blocking it with the staff or tying it up with the yo-yo, it's pretty much game over as she has no other moves. But still a good effort. And next up, we'll go Dark Owl, who's essentially Batman if Batman wasn't Bruce Wayne and was instead a middle-aged school principal with a hero complex. Because he's Batman themed, he has gadgets for everything, and a supercomputer to help him out, which makes him dangerous. But he's stuck this far down the list because he is not Bruce Wayne, which makes him a much less effective Batman than he could be. Seriously, if Bruce Wayne got akumatized and given these powers, game over for the heroes. He'd turn up in their bedroom at night to beat them down after tracking them for days learning who they are. They'd have no chance. So maybe I'm being unfair on Dark Owl, but he'll stay down here. Next up, we come to Shell Shock, the first of our akumatized heroes. And probably the least good. Unlimited shields. Yeah, shields are good and all. And he has that shell to wallop people with, but ultimately, he'd probably be best as a villain partner. Not necessarily as a standalone villain against Ladybug and Cat Noir. I feel like it would take ages and ages to beat this dude, but I feel like they'd never really be in danger of losing either. And now we're at Zombie Zoo. With her lipstick, she can blow kisses that turn people into mindless zombies that want to kiss people. Ugh. It's kind of gross, but at least now you have a nice zombie horde that the heroes have to avoid, but that Zombie Zoo can hide in. And the more zombies there are, the harder it gets for the heroes to dodge the villain, and more likely that they're going to be able to hit one with a kiss. Or that a zombie will do it. So you've got one of the heroes. But at the same time, mindless zombies are much less useful than actual minions you can order around. They're mindless. They can't really think about what they're doing. So that prevents her going any higher on the list. So this brings us to Captain Hardrock. Flying ship that can fire chains out to tangle up your enemies and steal their miraculous with relative ease? Hell yeah! Lasers? Hell yeah! Ability to track enemies with your compass? Hell yeah! Plus a microphone that can double as a pseudo lightsaber type thing? Pretty decent. But once they actually get on top of your ship, it's pretty much game over. Ooh, still good though. We'll go Reverser next, and he has all the normal enhancements, plus he can fly around on a hoverboard, and if he hits you with a paper aeroplane, he can reverse a characteristic. In the episode itself, he makes Ladybug clumsy and Cat Noir a coward. But a surefire way to win this battle is to reverse their loyalty and make them hate each other, and then just fight. It would be very useful, since they'd be fighting. But they'd also probably still hate you and fight you as well, so it would be a struggle to win all the same. Still very useful though. Next up, this one might be controversial because I know he's popular. Maybe I should have put him higher, but here's where I'm putting it. Sandboy. He can make the nightmares of people come to life using his flying sand pillow thing. And he can also shoot out sand beams, but they don't seem to do much damage. And I mean, it's useful, but it's not entirely foolproof and relies too much on what the hero views as their bad dream. Ultimately, too much is left up for chance for this guy to go any higher. Although I accept that I might be wrong on this one as well. Despair Bear's next. And this dude should not be able to get this high, but simply put, his ability to hijack your brain is too strong to ignore. All he has to do after getting akumatized is not draw attention to himself. He then needs to create some sort of disaster that Ladybug and Cat Noir think they need to help out with. I don't know, maybe a big car pile-up. I know it sounds awful, but we're role-playing as the villain here, so get with the program. Or maybe control somebody to take a hostage publicly. Make a big address to the police. The heroes arrive, you sneak attack them, and have them take off their miraculous straight away. Don't play around. Because no matter what, now you've won, as at least one hero has had their identity revealed. So whilst Despair Bear might lose in the short term, Hawkmoth has just won the long game, and killed the partnership dead. I mean, hell, if you want to be really sneaky, just take control after the crisis is averted. After their fist bump, just jump on one of their backs, you're a little teddy, they won't notice. And then when you're in control, walk their ass to Hawk Daddy. Good game. It's over. But yeah, on the other hand, since he's a pipsqueak, he can't really do much else and would be useless otherwise, so he can't move further up the list. And now, we're at the high tier. And we can start with Anansi. She's strong as hell, has lots of appendages to batter you with, and shoots out sticky webs that can trap you and prevent you escaping. Ladybug herself really has no counter for this. And whilst Cat Noir can Cataclysm, he would easily just get webbed up again. It's like in that Bubbler episode where he bubbles, Cataclysm, then bubbles again. And since he's now got his countdown, he's stuffed. So yeah, realistically, she should easily be able to defeat the heroes, especially since she could easily lure them into traps. And next we'll go Rena Rage. Unlimited illusions and a bad attitude. Basically, you're able to go full Mysterio on the heroes. Very good. Beyond good even. It's a great power. Nothing else really needs to be said here. Then we go to Sapatis. And there are two of them, which adds to their chances, plus they're already strong, but become stronger if they roll into balls and launch themselves. And then on top of that, when they eat, they multiply. So theoretically, you can make an army of little gremlins to mob the heroes, knock them down, hold them down, and pinch their miraculouses. Game over. Seriously, give these kids a bunch of grapes and they'll take over the world. But anyway, that's been high tier. Time for God tier. And we'll start this tier off with Maledictator. He can send out bubbles that he can control at will that infect people and make them do what he orders them to do. So all he needs to actually do is hit everybody he can see in the whole of the city with bubbles and order them to hunt for Ladybug and Cat Noir's miraculouses. And just keep spamming it. Spam it, spam it, spam it. Until Ladybug and Cat Noir have to battle through the whole of Paris just to get to you. Strength in numbers and all of that. Except this time, instead of Zombie Zoo, they're under the villain's direct control. They're not mindless. They're being ordered to do stuff. And honestly, if it's being used like this, realistically, I don't see how the heroes could even hope to win. There's just too many. So next up, we'll come to Queen Wasp. And Queen Wasp is OP. Seriously, if she used those wasps properly, she would win for sure. Seriously, I'm not an expert on superheroing, but most people wouldn't notice flying bugs when they're in the middle of a fight or another intense activity. So send a couple of stealth wasps behind the heroes ready to attack them and immobilize them. And it's game over. Seriously, her power is to summon hundreds of tiny, hard-to-see insects that all have the power of the Bee Miraculous. They can all use venom. And on top of that, they all listen to her commands. How could she lose? I mean, as long as her brain's not smooth, so that explains how Chloe loses. Robustus is a super genius who brings mechanical objects to life and commands them. He's a great villain, it's as simple as that. He can turn into a giant robot. He can control anything. Ugh, he's too good. And he's only held back from top spot because he will betray you once you steal the hero's miraculouses for his own personal use. So, awkward. So we gotta finish with Catalyst. She can enhance you so that you can send out unlimited Akumas and infect every single angry or sad person in Paris. It's frankly ridiculous that Ladybug and Cat Noir were even able to survive this one in Season 2's finale. They only won because the script said they had to win, because in reality, this combo wins the day every single day of the week. It's just ridiculously OP. And that brings us to the end of the list. Whew, that was a big one. And of course, I'll remind you that these were just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the list? Agree, disagree, hate me? What would you change? I'm curious for any other opinions, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think.